Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. It's Comics Revisited. Today we're talking about Maximum Carnage. That's right everybody, thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin' Robbie Billups. This is Brooks the Magnificent you are for checking out the video. Today on Comics Revisited, kicking off the second episode of Season 2. 2-2, should have been a Two-Face story. Damn it. But instead, it's Maximum Carnage. We're talking about Maximum Carnage. That's the 1993 crossover from Marvel Comics, of course. It went across the entire Spider-Man family of books. It was 14 parts. It went across Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, and of course, it launched Spider-Man Unlimited. And that was the bookends. Part 1 was Spider-Man Unlimited number 1. The final part of Maximum Carnage was issue number 2.
Yeah, because like the Unlimited books were like bi-monthly or something.
Yeah. Well, yes, they were. I remember this came out weekly. I remember when I went to the comic shop every single week, and I was so pumped to get the next chapter of Maximum Carnage. 1993, I'm like 12, 13 years old, right? So you're like, what, 11, 12 years old, right?
Yeah.
That we're the perfect age for this kind of story. Now, at the time, it was considered excessively violent, which it is.
Yeah.
But by today's standards, it doesn't really show so much. But by comic book standards of the time, it's kind of filled with slaughter. Yeah, and I remember thinking,
they let you know that these people are dead.
Absolutely, right? Because it goes through all these different Spider-Man books, it's written by a whole bunch of people. Tom DeFalco, David Michelinie, of course, creator of Venom, Carnage, right? Mark Bagley joins in on the art team, Tom Lyle, Ron Lim. We also got J.M. DeMatteis, one of the best writers on this series, Terry Kavanagh, and a few other creators involved in this giant story at the time. And I don't know if it still is, it just might be, but at the time, it was the longest Spider-Man story as far as issue to issue there was. 14 chapters. Today, it seems excessive. If there was a 14-part story in a comic book today, wouldn't you be like, what the F? Right?
Yeah.
But at the time...
Yeah, like the Executioner song was like 12 parts, I think.
This was something that was way... It was just like, I don't know, back in the early 90s, everybody was so hyped for comic books, especially Marvel, and what they were doing. And Death of Superman into the Reign of Superman. So the Reign of Superman is happening at the same time. And I remember going to the comic shop, Brooks, and every week there'd be a new chapter of Reign of Superman. And there'd be a new chapter of Maximum Carnage. I was so excited to go to the comic shop. And so it worked. It 100% worked because this is one of the most popular Spider-Man stories of all time. It's seriously, more people know this story than Kraven's Last Hunt.
Yeah.
Which is obviously a better story. Did you read this story when it first came out, Brooks?
I read parts of it. Like, the first Spider-Man comic I actually got was one of the Maximum Carnage. It was the Amazing Spider-Man issue that has, like, Venom and Carnage fighting on the front of it.
Yes.
And, like, Spider-Man
in the middle?
background.
Yeah, or in the back. Yeah. That was, like, early on. It was, like, chapter 3 or 4 or something.
It was like I think it was 3.
Mark Bagley. That stuff just... I could not tell you how much I loved Carnage.
Yeah.
And Venom. So, when you finally... When did you read it all together for the first time?
Probably in like 2010.
Okay, so you read it bits and pieces when it first came out.
Yeah, I'd read I'd say mostly the beginning.
Yeah.
Probably like the first half.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
What's crazy is this story is approaching in a few years. 30 years anniversary. Is that not nutso thinking about that?
Yeah.
So we're going to get into Maximum Carnage here. Like I said, this is a sequel to Carnage. So Carnage was introduced in Amazing Spider-Man 361 and around there. It was a nice 3-issue story. Venom was involved. Mark Bagley did the artwork. Great stuff. This was the next time we saw Carnage. So basically what happens is Carnage, we think that the symbiote is dead. So they put him in Ravencroft Institute. Turns out the symbiote has mutated into his blood so that if he gets cut, the symbiote can reform. And I thought when I was a kid how badass of an idea that was. What do you think?
Yeah, that was pretty neat. Like, cause like he's been trapped, like powerless, in the psychiatric ward, and like all it takes is a nurse like pricking him with his needle, and he's killing everybody. Yeah.
What's crazy is I remember later on they talk about how they're stopping him from biting his tongue. Why didn't he just do that? Maybe he didn't know. He didn't know at the time, right? He didn't know until he got cut again.
Yeah, you may not have.
Right. There you go. Anyway, so when the story comes out, basically what happens is Carnage escapes. He becomes Carnage again. He escapes. He winds up with Shriek. They meet the Doppelganger and the Demogoblin and Carrion. And there's this. They form this whole sick, twisted family based around Shriek, which was a new character at the time. But the Doppelganger came from the Infinity Wars. Demogoblin.
This story is surprisingly a lot about family, actually.
It is.
You know, it has Peter. His parents are back.
Yes.
At the time, he's having his troubles with his dad. Like, you know, reacclimating into the real world. You know, he has this very dark outlook on life
because they were captured by Russians. I think they turned out to be clones.
He was in a Soviet prison. Yeah,
I think ultimately they were clones. I can't remember
what happened about that.
Because then it was tied into the Vulture. Remember, the Vulture became young during that time, and it was like came up with clones.
He was having troubles with Mary Jane.
It is very much like family. We'll get to that very, very soon. So, since there's so many bad guys that are happening, of course, Spider-Man is not alone. It's Spider-Man, it's Venom, it's Cloak, it's Dagger, it's Black Cat, it's Iron Fist, it's Morbius, it's Deathlock, it's Nightwatch.
Captain America.
And Captain America, of course. Very severely underutilized. But basically, Carnage and his family go on this killing spree in New York City. And I remember some of those, in that issue you were talking about with Spider-Man in the background and Carnage and Venom fighting on the cover. He goes through Central Park, and you just see
like
him.
These old couples driving through Central Park at night, and he just rips the top of the car open, and you just see him murdering them.
You look back now, it's all done in silhouette and shadow, and there's not any actual red blood shown or anything, but man, this book gets graphic for its time.
Hey, your imagination kind of fills in the blanks. You know?
Do you remember we were talking about Venom Funeral Pyre?
Yeah.
And we were like, how violent it was and how it felt. It was so, like, everybody was talking about how violent this book was. And it was something that was criticized at the time. Comic books themselves were becoming more violent, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, one of the things I love about the story is that, yes, Carnage is going on this killing spree, right? But it's also about how Spider-Man, a character like Spider-Man, a character like Superman, right? A stand-up, straight-edge, no-holds-barred, I'll do the right thing no matter what, right? How does that kind of character fit in an age when Venom and Carnage and Punisher and Wolverine and all these characters are the most popular? Spawn, you know? Yeah. How do you recover from Todd McFarlane, basically? And I really like that idea. And you were talking about the family aspect. A lot of this also not only deals with Peter's relationship to his newly resurrected father, who was in a prison camp.
This is like not long after Harry had died.
It's right after Harry died.
Sacrificed himself to
save
Peter. It
is the immediate comic book right after, because it has his funeral in the first part.
Yeah.
And that was Spectacular Spider-Man 200, where he died with the foil cover.
Yeah.
I loved that issue. Sal Buscema did the artwork on that. Of course, he did the artwork throughout this, and JMD Matthias. A great writer. So, but also the Peter Mary Jane stuff is actually some of the most sophisticated Spider-Man storytelling out there of the era, because they're painting a real relationship, a real early marriage. And we got to think, Spider-Man and Mary Jane got married, 87? Something like that, I think. Yeah. So in 1993, it hadn't been that long. They're still kind of technically newlyweds, thinking about the the time scale.
Comic time.
Yeah, right? Marvel comic time. But it's a fairly decent portrayal of a young couple, a young married couple, going through a difficult time. It really, really is. And some of that kind of hits pretty home. And of course, the absolute end of the story is, in the early part of the story, Cloak dies. Not Cloak, Dagger. Dagger dies. And I remember being like, I didn't know who Cloak and Dagger were.
Yeah, I loved Cloak and Dagger, though, man. I thought they should use those guys more.
Well, they got a TV show yet. Have you seen that?
No.
I hear good things.
Ads for it.
I hear good things. I haven't. But this was my introduction, and they kill Dagger. But then she comes back at the end. She's the ray of hope. They basically defeat all of Carnage's family with a machine that takes the goodness of their souls. They Care Bear stare these guys.
Pretty much.
Right?
Like, it's an Iron Fist technique that this turn into this technology so that they can all... And Deathlock uses his robotic body to fire it.
They take all their goodness, their force of goodness from within and fire it into a beam. And they defeat everybody, and Carnage faces death, and then him and Venom and Spidey have their ultimate showdown. Of course, throughout the story, Spider-Man is plagued with this idea of how do I adapt to this new set. Like, Should I kill Carnage? Should I help Venom and Black Cat and company kill Carnage?
Yeah.
Because that's what's... They're so single-minded. Venom's like, we gotta stop Carnage.
That's like all Venom talks about. We gotta kill Carnage.
That's all he talks about.
Like, why do you come back and save me? You should have killed Carnage.
Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
He's a total jerk about it, you know?
Let's look at the artwork real quick. What do you think about the artwork? So we got Mark Bagley, we got Ron Lim, we got Tom Lyle. We got so many artists doing so much great work. And for its time, it's really good. My favorite bits are the Mark Bagley bits.
Yeah.
He's my favorite artist on Spidey, Venom, and Carnage, so I love his stuff. Tom Lyle was a new kid around the block at the time. Did a great job on this artwork. Whoever did Web was really good too. And Ron Lim's stuff from the first chapter, the Unlimited. And I love how the last issue of Unlimited is split between Bagley and Lim. Like they knew that was the definitive Venom. They were the symbiote artists. You know what I'm saying? What do you think about the artwork throughout?
I thought it was good. It was, you know, it was a good solid 90s artwork, you know?
Good solid 90s artwork. Yeah. Real fun stuff. What was your favorite? Like out of the Bagley, it was the Amazing Spider-Man bits.
Yeah.
And David Michelini was probably one of the best writers. Him and Dave Matthias were the two best writers. That was the Spectacular Spider-Mans were J.M. Dave Matthias with Sal Buscema on the artwork. He had the square.
Yeah.
And I really liked him. That's John's brother, of course. And I absolutely hated his artwork back in the day, but I loved it. I love it now.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I remember not liking it as much back then either, but then like
it's kind of like the way I initially felt about people.
It doesn't feel as jarring as it used to.
No, not at all. It actually, you see the composition. Yeah. You see the storytelling ability. You see how it flows.
It's kind of like how Jack Kirby is too, though. Like if you the first time you look at a Jack Kirby, you're like, oh, man, it's kind of, you know, it's pretty rough. But then like you're getting to appreciate, you know, the way he makes things look like they're moving and like all this craziness is happening. Yeah. Like with just shapes and. Sal Buscema is like a more sparse Jack Kirby. Yeah. If that makes sense. He also drew that Spectacular Spider-Man 200 that had the Death of Harry. Which was very impactful. I still have the 2 copies I had back in the day. It was probably the first comic book books I ever bought 2 copies of. Yeah. Because I was like, it's got a foil cover and this Death of Harry. Yeah, I'd always pick up them foil covers back in the day. They did their job. And you know, back then, I didn't know who Norman Osborn was. Yeah, Harry was Green Goblin, as far as I was concerned. I knew about Spider-Man. Yeah. And it's really nice to see that after the death of one of Peter's closest friends and one of his greatest enemies, and we've talked about this on Movie Monday back like in a year or 2 ago, right? I love the way they did this story and it's Spider-Man 3. Yeah. That's the best part of Spider-Man 3, the movie. Bug. Yeah, right? I love how they handled Harry in that. See your pal Spider-Man. Yeah, so I don't want Harry, when Harry eventually gets introduced into the MCU, I don't want him to get the shaft like he got in the Amazing Spider-Man franchise. You didn't like that? No. You know I didn't. The art's really good. Sal Buscema stuff was good. I remember right after this, too, they did a Tombstone story in Spectacular Spider-Man. That was really, really cool. But that's not what we're talking about right here. It was also, of course, a big crossover between all these Spider-Man books that happened every week. Like we were talking about. There was as many Spider-Man books as there were X-Men books. There were 4 ongoing Spider-Man books, and then they added Unlimited. There were just as many. And that's why Executioner's Song could have worked back then. That's why Maximum Carnage worked. That's why Reign and Superman worked. Back then, we both still buy comic books every week, and we look forward to new comic book day, right? But we don't have that sense anymore of this story going into this story. That's why I do like things like X-Men Disassembled and Batman Eternal. I do like the weekly storyline. I really, really do. Throw in some different artists all working together. I like those. Did you ever read Batman Eternal? It's like a weekly book. I read like the first couple of issues. All together, it's all right, but it feels like today they don't put their all into it. Back then, this was them putting their all into it. Yeah. You know? And that's just the way it was. At the time, it was criticized for being excessively violent. Of course it's excessively violent. It was, you know. It's really tamed. It seems tame by today's standards, doesn't it? Yeah, it's like it didn't like, I don't think it made light of, you know, the death and everything, and like, because Spider-Man's like going through a big crisis the whole time about like he has to do the right thing, but when he does it, that lets Carnage get away. Carnage kills more people. Yeah. So it's like he just keeps building on his conscience. And he gets his ribs busted like first thing. I remember being a kid and being like feeling every issue, and they do a great job artistically and through the story of making you feel how hurt Spider-Man is. And then like later on, he gets hit in the other side of his head.
And I love how, like, just because it's popular to, like, show how the art shows that the ribs are messed up by bandaging it.
Yeah.
But Mary Jane's like, I didn't think they bandaged ribs. Well, they did it for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, right?
Yeah, I thought that
was
pretty
man,
funny.
you could feel it. And let's talk about this real quick, Brooks. The shit that Spider-Man goes through. And having problems with his lady. Having problems with his newly resurrected father.
Yeah.
Right? Having such an existential crisis of faith about who I am. What is my responsibility? I have the power. Is my responsibility to kill Carnage? Because at one point, we were talking about this. No mercy!
You'll get no mercy from Spider-Man!
Speak on that real quick. Like, what is the journey Spider-Man takes in this book?
Well, it's like, first off, it's his typical Spider-Man thing. Like, oh, Carnage is out. I gotta do something. Because, he feels responsible for that. But, like, as it goes on, it becomes more and more apparent to him, like, that Carnage is too powerful for him. He has to team up with someone, like, he just can't stand.
Because it took him and Venom before.
Yeah. He can't work with Venom, because Venom will kill people.
And this takes place right after Lethal Protection.
Yeah. It's like, Venom had been established as, he's a hero, but, he's more along the Punisher vein of
the
hero.
anti-hero.
Yeah. The hero who will kill the bad guys.
Whatever it takes. Yeah, good stuff, right? Absolutely. Yeah. This book was insanely popular. I think the most important thing about Maximum Carnage is that still to date, it is the most popular symbiote story out there.
Yeah.
Everybody our age that read comic books back in the early 90s.
It's like the definitive Carnage versus Venom kind of, really.
Yeah, and it threw all these other people in it, man. And this was something I loved
like
when I was a
the
kid.
family, like Shriek and like Demo Goblin.
Demo Goblin was so...
Carrion just came out of nowhere for me.
Came out of nowhere.
I had no idea who Carrion was.
You're right, me neither. But
I thought he was kind of cool, but like, it's like, why is he here? And like in the end, he's talking to Shriek like, Mother! And I'm like, he'd never spoken
He's the one that fully bought it. And I'll tell you this, when I first got introduced to Carrion, I was like, what an overpowered character.
Yeah, he is kind of.
So he touches you and you die?
Dead, yeah.
It's like Omega Red. It's like, what are you going to do? Like, people will die by the bucket load in this one. But it was insanely popular, and it introduced me to some of those characters. Like, I had seen Demo Goblin and the Doppelganger before in Infinity Wars and in the Web of Spider-Man.
I never heard of those guys.
I, to this day, love the Doppelganger because of Maximum Carnage, man. And he gets killed at the end. Luckily, he gets better. Yeah. Right? And Shriek is interesting, and she's been underutilized ever since then.
Yeah. And the way she has, like, some pretty, like, powers that could be really useful, story-wise.
Yeah, because while Carnage is wreaking havoc, Shriek is helping cause.
She's like amplifying negative feelings and stuff, and turning the mob against each other.
So it makes sense if Shriek is amplifying negative feelings. It makes sense that the good guys would amplify their good feelings into Deathlock through Iron Fist. Right there you go. But that moment when Captain America shows up and says, "You need a hand,
son."
There you go. This book was so popular. The story is still so popular, and it was super popular back in the day that it spawned out a video game. And the very next year, Maximum Carnage came out as a video game. What I remember about this, and you said that you recently beat this with our friend George, right? I remember the fact that I had a red cartridge. Super cool. I remember Carnage's voice was super nifty and super cool. What'd you think about the game? Since you beat it.
Yeah, I actually liked the game. It seems a bit hard at first, but it's one of those games you have to play and you have to master, and there's like so many different things you can do, and there's certain power-ups you got to find.
Yeah.
You got to know where the one-ups are and all this stuff. It's like, I think you could get through it, like, if you know that. But, your first time playing through, like, when I was a kid, I was like, I rented this game, and I played it one time, like...
Yeah, right?
I think I got to, like, the third stage of Subway, and then, like, that first boss fight, I'd always be like, let's continue, man.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. So let's get into the themes real quick.
Thank God for save states.
Let's get into the themes real quick about Maximum Carnage, because even though it seems like a silly early 90s crossover, it does have some relevant thematic elements that are still very appropriate for today's audiences, to be honest with you. First of all, the most prevalent one to me is that it takes darkness to introduce light. That after darkness comes light. Post-Tenebrous
That's kind of like the whole Cloak and Dagger shtick. Right?
That is the whole thing. Dagger dies. The light literally dies at the beginning of the story.
Yeah, but she's not dead. She's like inside of him.
Yeah, inside the darkness. but it takes the darkness to bring out
like
that
she
light.
lost her form, but like I guess her form like went straight to him and was in the dark dimension or whatever, like healing up in there.
But think about what that says symbolically. So it's the light dies and it has to nestle in the darkness. That means that we have to go through the dark times in order to bring out the light inside of us. You've heard the old saying, basically, you can't enjoy the good times without the bad, right? Yeah. That's a real thing in life. If everything was hunky-dory all the time...
We'd be bored all the time.
We would be bored.
We'd be complaining about how boring everything was.
Exactly, right? So the light after darkness, it's a cycle, right? And sometimes things have to get really dark and at the edge of absolute despair before it gets better, right? And that's something that I think we can all learn. This was also a response to those extreme late 80s, early 90s comics. Punisher, whatever happened after Watchmen, after Dark Knight Returns. Heroes got grittier. They got grimmer, bleaker.
X-Force.
X-Force, Cable, Spawn, Shadowhawk, all these heroes being very amoral, killing people. The ends justify the means. The rise of some of those Vertigo characters like Hellblazer. Preacher is on the horizon out there at some point. A very bleak look at heroism in humanity, right? And this is a direct response to that because Spider-Man, like we were talking about earlier, is one of those characters.
He's
like
a clean cut.
He's like a Superman or a Captain America, right? And so to see him come up against this and question his own existence was something really, really strong to me. It also does speak about immorality in society. And what other thing do you want to talk about real quick, Brooks? Maybe something about what you called the mob mentality.
Yeah, that's because Spider-Man's not just fighting Carnage and Shriek and Demogoblin. Like, he's fighting whoever is around in New York at the time, basically.
Yeah, right.
There's everybody's just going crazy. Like, Carnage is just killing people at will. And, people are being affected by Shriek's powers and everything. So, basically, most of the finale is, the team, Spider-Man's team, kind of just fighting off this crazy mob that's out of control.
With a Care Bear stick.
Yeah. Spider-Man has to save them, some kids. This mother's, about to throw her kids off a building.
Yeah, right?
And Spider-Man comes in to save them. She's like, oh my God, Spider-Man, thank you.
Did you read that one when you were a kid?
No, I didn't get that far.
That messed me up, dude. This was some dark stuff.
I remember, just recently reading through, I was kind of like, wow, that's kind of dark.
Absolutely, and it leads into the idea of how easily it is for for everybody to jump into this mob mentality. Especially nowadays, we think about how divisive society is, Brooks, and how easy it is to jump in this us versus them, join in with the rest. Yeah. Oh, I'm like you, I hate them. Let's mob up together against them, and you're just like those jerk-offs at the end of Maximum Carnage, right? Right? So think free and understand that when the bad times come, they're to help us get to the light. And not everything, of course, is as clean and cut as that makes it sound, but not everything is black and white. I think that's one of the things that Maximum Carnage deals with, is that Spider-Man, for not the first time, because this was something that was prevalent throughout the 80s, but Maximum Carnage was a definitive statement by Michelini and DeMatteis and others about where the true, clean-cut, optimistic, hopeful, good-natured, moral hero fits in 1993, when we are just filled up with Punisher. Batman's got his back broke, Superman's dead. Yeah. Where do we go from here? Maximum Carnage answers that question, right? Yeah, and it portrays a hopeful future, actually.
Yeah.
Which I think we've gotten back to. I think now we have a better balance between true heroism and anti-heroism in today's comics. Don't you think?
I think so.
Justice League's about a big.
It's they don't make it as extreme I've been reading some early Punisher stuff, the
80s stuff?
Yeah. And it's he's very, he's kind of politically outspoken at times. Oh, these stinking liberals. They're just letting these criminals back on the streets and I have to kill them.
It doesn't surprise me.
Which it makes sense, really, when you think about it.
It really does. Absolutely does. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us for this video, looking back and revisiting Maximum Carnage. Me and Brooks had a lot of fun revisiting this one.
This is a good story.
It was.
To revisit.
I would recommend it. It holds up, especially if you got that tinge of nostalgia like we do. Yeah. The nostalgia adds
And like there's a Carnage thing coming up, so like
yeah, Absolute Carnage going on right now. Yeah. Absolutely.
Like at the end, the last page of some of my comics, I'm like, wait, there's another little 2-page.
Yeah, they're building up to it. Absolute Carnage, of course, a spiritual successor to Maximum Carnage. Very excited. That's why we're doing this episode right now. Right? Even though we haven't even read Maximum Carnage yet. Or Absolute Carnage yet, I should say. No, because it's way early. But this is coming out way later.
Oh, maybe we'll.
But nobody needs to know that. Why am I right? Never mind the men behind the curtain. Anyway,
attention to the man behind
thanks for checking out the video. Let us know your recollections and what you think about Maximum Carnage in the comments down below. Join us next time here on Comics Revisited, where I'm joined by my homie Brian Weaver. Brian the Spider Weaver. Brian the Dream Weaver. Let's call him that. Oh, B-dubs.
Sounds like a Friday the 13th.
We're going to be talking about
Elm Street sequel.
We're going to be talking about our first Vault comic here on Comics Revisited. We're going to be revisiting Dennis Camp, Vittorio Astoni, and Aditya Bidakar's Maxwell's Demons. Have you read all of that yet?
No.
You got to. So good. So good. So good. We're going to be revisiting that next time. Thank you guys so much for checking out the video. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Join us over at popculturephilosophers.com for podcasts and a whole lot more. If you want to financially support this channel, maybe check out our live streams on Sunday nights most times at 7 o'clock U.S. Central Time, or go over to patreon.com/PCP where you can help support this channel. Thank you so much for rocking with us. I've been Rockin' Robbie Billups. This has been Brooks. I'm Robbie. We're PCP. And remember, Kramer. You ready?
Yep.
Hey, everybody.
Oh, are you fucking kidding me? What are the fucking odds? Hello? Hey. Alright, man. I'll probably see you tomorrow. Alright, man, we'll see you.
You ready? you what's your high score in Snake?